Coming up, meet the new chair of the Arizona Indian Gaming Association. A Bush Fellow works towards historic preservation for the White Earth Ojibwe, and more Native candidates punch their way to November's general election. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
Arizona PBS is proud to support Indian Country Today. For 6 decades, we've provided television programs and now digital content. But we go beyond that, sending outreach teams across Arizona, offering workshops in language and literacy, family engagement and community outreach, and supporting tribal communities with early learning and school readiness resources. Join us at azpbs.org.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amarawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. The U.S. Supreme Court has handed down another decision on a case involving federal Indian law. On Wednesday, the High Court ruled in favor of the Isleta del Sur Pueblo located near El Paso, Texas. The case began as a years-long gaming battle between the tribal nation and the state. The justices voted 5-4, allowing the tribal nation to offer electronic bingo at its gaming facility. Conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote the majority opinion. ICT regular contributor John Tasuda reacted to the case.
Well, I think it's a big win for Indian country. Now, it's a 5-4 decision, which means there's still some questions that members of the court have, but it's a solid win to get on the books.
Gorsuch said the decision does not mean Isleta del Sur can add any gaming it wants. It must follow federal law, including the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. More cases involving federal Indian law are expected to be released this term, including one on the Indian Child Welfare Act and another on the McGirt case. We continue our Native vote coverage. In Nevada, an Indigenous educator beat out 6 others to win the Democratic Party's nomination. Oglala citizen Mercedes Krause is running for a spot in the U.S. House to represent Nevada's 2nd Congressional District. Krause was labeled as an underdog, yet initial results show her winning with a significant lead. The doctoral student and union advocate won in the only solidly red district in the state. Part of her campaign platform includes getting Indigenous people a seat at the table. According to reporting by ICT, Krause is the only Indigenous congressional candidate that ran in the June 14th primary election. Krause will face off against Republican incumbent Mark Amodei, who has held the seat since 2011. Now to Oklahoma, where the Cherokee Nation has been involved in a dispute over the state flag. Earlier this month, Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. issued an executive order calling for the removal of the Oklahoma state flag from all tribal properties. The move came as the tribe reports mounting division with the state's governor, Kevin Stitt. In a statement, Hoskin Jr. said after his executive order, many Cherokee citizens were opposed to removing the flag. Then earlier this week, the Cherokee leader reversed his decision and restored the flag. He said he was moved by the concerns of his citizens and hopes for cooperation with the state. He added that not all of the concerns about the move were bad and that with more robust conversation, the Cherokee Nation could reconsider it at some point in the future. Well, the Navajo Nation is mourning the loss of one of its former vice chairmen. Edward Begay was vice chairman of the Navajo Nation in the 1980s. He was the head of the legislative branch during some key moments in tribal government. Begay presided over the nation's council when the tribe incorporated traditional, natural, and customary laws into its government system. The former vice chairman represented the Church Rock and Bread Springs chapters on the tribal council from 1971 to 1983, and as vice chairman from 1983 to 1987, he worked to negotiate mineral, coal, oil, and gas leases with major energy companies. No cause of death was given by Begay's family, but they say he passed away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, surrounded by relatives. Actress and star of Rutherford Falls, Jana Schmieding, hit the talk show circuit this week, and she took her social media followers along for the ride. The hit series is gearing up for its next season. Part of that includes promoting the show. Schmeeding and other members of the cast appeared on NBC's Today Show. The actress made her way down the road to Times Square for a quick photo shoot with her show on a giant banner just behind her. Once her morning show duties were done, Jana made a solo appearance on NBC's Late Night with Seth Meyers. She even gifted Meyers with a beaded Boston Red Sox hat. Schmeeding kept Saturday Night Live's former head writer on his toes with her incredible stories. The second season of Rutherford Falls is now streaming on the NBC Peacock app. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, historic preservation in Minnesota and a recap of Tuesday's primary elections across the country. But first, what impact does native gaming have on local and state economies? We find out. Indian country today is now ICT. The Arizona Indian Gaming Association has a new chair. Robert Miguel is its new leader. He adds that to his responsibilities as the chairman of the Ak-Chin Indian community. Hi, Chairman. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, and thanks for having me on.
So you just got back from a pretty big trip on behalf of the Arizona Indian Gaming Association. Tell us about that.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was really quick but wonderful. We were able to meet with the cabinet members from the president of Mexico's area. And, it gave us an opportunity to not only see what potential opportunities Arizona tribes and the Mexican government can do together as far as, opportunities, commercial, industry, gaming, whatnot. And to be able to sit and, again, get acquainted with one another, we were able to discuss certain areas of potential opportunity, and just meet some high-profile people within the government. And, it was really great. It was overall getting familiarized with one another again. As you know, Indian tribes in Arizona have some kind of relationship overall in this history and past with the Mexican government or the people we come from that area. So it was felt like a family get-together, a reunion. But again, we got to sit down and discuss this potential opportunity. It was more of an introduction and getting reacquainted with one another. But so we'll see how it goes, and we're looking forward to the future and going back and potentially bringing more tribes that are in the organization to meet with the government there.
What strikes me is that I'm located here in Phoenix, and we're generally in the same area. And, Mexico's really not that far away. So it seems like this is something that could be a really viable option to, sort of bring people from Mexico into the United States and, hopefully game at some of your facilities.
Definitely, that is true. We're only about an hour and a half from the border of Mexico here in Ak-Chin. And one of the opportunities we're looking at, and again, other than gaming, there's the proposed I-11, the Interstate 11, that's going to begin in Mexico and make its way through Las Vegas and eventually up to Washington State. So with the interstate coming through in the future, again, it gives us an opportunity to look at potential ways to prosper, both not just Arizona, but Mexico overall in general. So, those conversations happened, and we're excited about the future. Of course, with the interstate coming through, there's going to be other needs around that interstate. There may be a small town that begins and ends up being a city decades from now. So the opportunity and the potential of growth is really a great opportunity for us to look at. We need to prepare for that. We need to make sure that we're doing all we can to prosper from that, especially because that I-11 is going in between not only a couple of miles from our community of Ak-Chin, but Tohono O'odham Nation. It runs through both communities. But again, how do we look at getting the other 20 tribes involved into an economic venture together? So opportunities there. We're looking forward to it and we're excited.
Let's actually talk more about that because we cover gaming all across the country, but give our viewers a sense of how big of an economic driver gaming is in Arizona specifically.
Well, I tell you what, it says almost $2 billion, but in reality, $2 billion since the gaming has come into Arizona, has come into play for tribes, we've given back to the state of Arizona. And I say over 2 billion because, there's other opportunities we've had through the 20 years that we've supported. Again, you can go back to Auction and Gila River supporting the Super Bowl and just a number of other activities that have come to Arizona. So we've given back over $2 billion again to the state of Arizona. It's done wonders for tribes overall. For here in Auction, we've been able to provide a number of opportunities for our members, from healthcare to education, and just another, again, as we grow, just other opportunities to build around our casino, make it more of a family destination. So it's grown in a number of ways. We've been able to, again, provide services, not just to Indian country here in Arizona, but throughout the whole state. Part of our compacts, we give 12% back to the state for certain needs and then some. So it's been a true economic driver for our communities and has done, again, wonders. Things we never fathomed, things we never thought we could do for our people. We're doing it today and we're continuing to do it. And the most important aspect, I think, is for tribes in the state and how we continue to get along is that we're abiding by the guidelines and the rules of the compact, and we're protecting the integrity of the game, and so that's really key.
We only have about a minute left, but you mentioned the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is actually going to be hosted in Phoenix in 2023. What role do you see gaming tribes in Arizona playing in sort of promoting this big event?
I'll tell you what, again, I'd mentioned Auction and Gila River of the 22 tribes are taking part in that. But, we've reached out to the Arizona Super Bowl host committee to see what we can do as far as exposing the other tribes or all tribes in general. One of the ideas I did share with the committee is that, when teams arrive to the big game here, that we do have representatives from all 22 tribes meet them at the airport in traditional attire or whatnot, and maybe traditional songs, because we do, when we do host, when we have had produced hosted a team in the past, we've had other, from the Hispanic sector to others that have greeted the teams that come in. My thought was 11 tribes hosting one team and the other 11 tribes hosting the other team to Arizona. But, we want to do things, again, as far as maybe a village to where we could showcase the tribes overall. Of course, you have the Herd Museum, but we're working with the committee right now to see what we can do as far as truly exposing the 22 tribes in Arizona and just letting them know how important it is to come and visit our communities.
Well, Chairman, we'll have to check in with you again. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate it. And remember, we all win with Auction.
Indian country today is now ICT. We're visiting with another Bush Fellow. These individuals receive a grant up to $100,000 to strengthen their skills. Take a look at this interview I did with Jamie Arsenault earlier this week. Tribal historic preservation officers are on the front line of repatriation and historical trauma. This year, one of those tribal historic preservation officers is a Bush Fellow. Jamie Arsenault currently serves in this position at the White Earth Band of Minnesota Chippewa. Welcome, Jamie, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So your Bush Fellowship lasts 2 years. Tell us about what some of your goals are during this project.
I had three main goals. So really, the first is self-reflection. I think that, many of us, we have to run from one important deadline to the next to the next. And so this is an opportunity to be able to pause and just check in and see how I'm doing so that the work that I'm doing moving forward is more effective. I want to spend more time learning from others. I've kept this diary for years of all the people I've wanted to meet and talk to and just learn from. And so this is an opportunity to really be able to do that and then apply that knowledge gained towards my work.
Under this umbrella of tribal historic preservation officers, it seems like, there's a lot of ways to interpret what the officers actually do. Maybe tell us about, in your role specifically, what kinds of initiatives you work on and sort of what you can be found doing on a daily basis.
The way that I approach the work is it's very future focused for me. I look at what communities care about most, and that's the thing that I focus on. So there, whether it's sensitive places or sacred places, whether it's certain types of initiatives that really matter to the community, then those are the things that I focus on and I really work towards protecting, whether it's landscapes or returning cultural items, whatever that may be. And I just work towards that. So I've served Indian country for most of my life at this point and worked with different communities. And so each community will be a little different. With White Earth, for example, protecting wild rice is really important. Protecting waterways is really important. Repatriation of items, it's really important. So I focus there.
Does your work at all involve working with historic trauma of boarding schools? And maybe what do people from White Earth tell you about that?
We're more at the truth finding stage, to be honest. So we haven't done these massive dialogues. We're really looking at trying to find those archival resources and connect with different institutions and bring that information back so that we can have those broader conversations within community. But yes, I do focus on that because I work a lot on archives and finding where information was taken. And so, in the same way that the disruption of so many Indian communities was intentional, we have to be intentional in the undoing of that and the reclaiming and revitalizing of communities. And so right now, when it comes to boarding schools, we're really at a truth-finding stage.
I'm really curious, when we hear from Native folks, of course, a lot of young people really talk about climate change being something that is impacting their communities. Maybe talk about that.
Definitely impacting. In northern Minnesota, there are a lot of young people talking about this, but people of all ages as well, especially anyone that participates in wild ricing, fishing. They're noticing changes, whether it's in the water level or the quality of the rice in a particular year, how much fish they're able to get in any particular season. So that all falls in line as well with a lot of the work that the TIPO officers in Minnesota do. We work to try to keep extractive industries out of wild rice watersheds, for example, or other projects that might harm the health of fish or other plants or animals that the community uses, or just treaty territory in general.
You mentioned working with other TIPO officers across Minnesota. Maybe talk about that collaboration and, how together as a group you're advocating for tribal nations in Minnesota.
We do check in with each other, for different meetings and such. And so whenever one of us has a question, we'll always be in touch with each other to try to see how we can best support each other. I think that you'll see that a lot of the tribes in Minnesota are pretty in line with each other and with the goals that we all have. So we really work to support each other in that kind of way. And it's been this way for as long as I've been TIPO.
Well, Jamie, it was wonderful to visit with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Indian Country Today is now ICT. It was primary election day in 4 states on Tuesday. Voters from South Carolina, North Dakota, Nevada, and Maine headed to the polls. Here to give us an update on how Native candidates fared is Polly Dibble. She is ICT's political correspondent. Hi, Polly. Nice to see you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me again, Aaliyah. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's just jump right in. Let's start in Nevada. What happened there?
Exciting news in Nevada. Oglala Lakota citizen Mercedes Krause is headed to the general election this fall. She won by an overwhelming margin in the state for the Democratic nomination, and that was super exciting to see. And the other candidate was Shea Backus, who was running for a state seat that she had actually already occupied from 2018 to 2020, but then didn't win re-election in the 2020 election. But she actually, that primary was canceled, and she just headed directly to the general election. And so she will go up against a young Republican candidate. And so that race is going to be super exciting to see in that specific district. The voters there lean more Democratic, but there are a huge percentage of those who are nonpartisan voters. And so it's really a third. It's a third of Democrat voters, a third of nonpartisan voters, and then a third of Republican voters. And so really that nonpartisan vote is definitely going to call that election.
So we know for sure that there will be 2 Native candidates on the ballot in Nevada in November. I just want to add in there that you had predicted Mercedes Krause would win. So, kudos to you for correctly predicting that. I want to move to North Dakota. What happened in North Dakota?
Yeah. So again, in North Dakota, it was a super exciting state legislative race. There were no congressional candidates that we know of in the North Dakota race. But at the state legislature level, there were 7 Indigenous candidates who ran as Democrats in a predominantly Republican race. And so out of the 7, 5 of them are moving forward into the general election. And so I will say this, though. Lillian Jones lost by only 13 votes. For District 41. And so I feel like that's very much in recount territory. And so we really won't know definitively until either that recount happens or until the absentee and mail-in ballots are collected. And so there, Ruth Buffalo, again, won by a huge margin in the Democratic primary. And so she's obviously, again, headed to the general election. Lisa Finley DeVille and Thomasina Mandan both ran against each other. They were both Indigenous candidates. So in that seat in particular, there was already going to be an Indigenous candidate from the Mandan Hidatsa Arikara Nation. And so Lisa Finley DeVille she won by just a few votes as well. And so that race will be exciting to see. And then Richard Marcellus again is heading for the Senate. And so he will head to the general election. He is seeking, I believe it's his 5th term. Colette Brown and then Jamie Davis are all headed to the general.
And in the other 2 states that had primary, South Carolina and Maine, it's my understanding that there was no Indigenous candidates to report on. Is that right?
Yes. So per our list at ICT, it's not a complete list. And so if there are candidates who did run in those states, please feel free to reach out to me, email me for that correction. But according to the list, there were none.
That's wonderful. I want to hop back over to Nevada because it's not every day that a Native candidate is on the ballot for Congress. But off the top of my head, I can't remember the last time there was a Native candidate from Nevada. Maybe talk about how much you think or you're predicting the Native community and the Native vote is going to rally around Mercedes Krause.
Yeah. So with Mercedes Krause, what makes this race so exciting is that in the particular district that she's running in, which is Nevada's 2nd congressional district, which is all of northern Nevada. There are 18 of the 27 nations located in that area. And Indigenous people make up about 2% of the population of Nevada, meaning, and then most of them live in the rural parts of the state, which are the northern parts of Nevada. And so it'll be really exciting to see, even if she can just get, 10 to 20,000 of that population to vote, it'll really make a difference in that election. And then combined with the votes that she already got, plus the other votes in the other Democratic race, it's definitely going to be a very competitive race. And I feel like people are going to discount the Native vote, and that is going to make a huge difference in this race.
Yeah, and we'll be watching closely. Polly, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having me, Aaliyah.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit IndianCountryToday.com. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.